Hi everybody, it's Annette from The Art of Intuition. And today we are delving into moving on from realities and the many things we tell ourselves to convince ourselves we've moved on or to convince ourselves not to move on. And this is going to go a couple different directions. That is just the mindset of my stuff today. So be prepared. Be prepared. I just did a whole Twitch stream that was all over the place. We covered everything from witchcraft to Star Trek, and I have a feeling this will probably do the same. So be on the lookouts for that video. I might even title it witchcraft to Star Wars or Star Trek. And I think we even put a little Lord of the Rings in there. So we covered a lot of different iterations. So we're going to try to do that today. Different things we do. Now, in our human consciousness, we will convince ourselves we're over something, right? We'll say, oh, I'm just going to let it go. I'm going to move on. Just let it go and move on. And that's a lot of material you see. It's all over the place. That you'll go to self-help groups and that's what you'll hear. You could do, third dimensional, I'm going to just call it third dimensional human consciousness counseling, mental health, whatever you want to call it. These are all, to me, very human consciousness things we used to kind of cope with being in human consciousness. We only need therapy because we're in human consciousness and we're trying to conform to that. That's why we do these things, to help us stay under, that illusion, to be able to fit into this world. I can't fit in on my own. I don't like it so much. I'm unhappy with it, but let me go to counseling to see if I can make myself not feel that way about it, Let me see if I can feel better about being here. So we get all this kind of advice, right? And it doesn't work. Never works. It doesn't work. People can say they moved on, and 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, they don't move on because our human consciousness wants to say, if we say the words, we can just move on, right? We don't understand the energetics of why we went through it. We don't understand the program of which it is anchored in our body. We don't understand the collective of which we're attached to, which is also running that same program. We don't understand how deep under we are, how bewitched we are in a sense with our own spell of what we've crafted. So we believe, honestly, that we can just say that and move on, or we can just ignore it and it'll go away. These are all tactics our human will do, We're going to Irish goodbye and sneak out of this reality. No one's going to even know I left. I'm going to say I moved on from it. I didn't move on from shit, but I'm going to say I moved on from it. And then I'm going to come over here and get into the whole situation all over again, but I'm going to make people look a little different, and I'm going to say it's different. It's just a bad straight to DVD sequel, straight to streaming, I guess that's what it would be nowadays, sequel that I'm going to try to convince myself is totally different. So none of these strategies work. So what happens when we actually start to understand we're not over something? We actually get honest with ourselves that we're not ready to move on. We're not over it. It's still there. And a lot of things I would think I was over, right? And there are a lot of times we're going to overly grieve things that seem ridiculous to other people, right? Because we're grieving all timelines. We're grieving every situation we've been through this. It's kind of a collective grieving. And we'll go through iterations of this too. And as we go through letting go of certain people, letting go of certain situations, letting go of certain realities, and I mentioned in the video I just did, we don't get into any of this moving on from realities, going to any of these channels we go to just because we want to go out of this reality. A lot of us get into these types of concepts and being able to create a reality and move on because we want other people to come with us. We want other people to go with us in these realities. If we're the only person in the reality and it's just us, it feels a lot easier to go in the direction we want to go in. But that's really not what we're striving for. That's what we try to tell ourselves we're striving for, But we want everyone to go with us. We don't want to go by ourselves. I want A, B, C, and D people to go with me, and they might not want to go, and they might be in a totally different place, but I want to drag them with me, right? That's what I want to know how to do. I don't want to just go do my own thing. I want everyone to come with me. And that's what can get us into the tropes of then looking for ways to be able to drag everybody with us. who are on a different path, or on different timelines, or in a different dimension. You can say it 100 different ways. It doesn't matter how you say it, okay? They're just somewhere else. You know, they're not supposed to go with us. They're not on this journey with us right now. They might come back into a different timeline later. It's not personal. It's just where it's at. And where we are, where they are, you know, usually people will speak it to you. They'll tell you. I can remember one person saying something to me, and they said, well, that's going to take a long time. And it was not about the reality we were trying to create. It was just something else completely mundane, in a sense, in a human consciousness conversation. But when I peeled the layers back years later, I understood that was in an unconscious level, that person telling me, it's going to be a long time before I'm ready to do any ascension work. You know, it's a long time for I'm going to be in my ascension realities. You know, I'm not even nowhere near. So a lot of this it's there. You know, it's all in the text, the subtext of subconscious, the unconscious parts of us that are, or maybe I don't want to say unconscious parts of us. It's in our subconscious, and we can go back from a different consciousness and start to pick those things out. And when I say pick it out, someone will ask me, well, what do you mean? It'll just stand out to you. And that was an important thing that person said. At the time, it seemed like nothing. It's like watching a murder mystery on TV, and these things seem like they're not important. And then later on, when they start crafting however the whole murder occurred or whatever it is, all these things that seem mundane fit into a bigger puzzle, and they fit into this bigger piece. And that's what happens. That's what your consciousness, your higher aspects, the more conscious you are, that's what you start to be able to put together, the energetics of the reality. What was going on there? It's not what my human thought was going on there. You know, that's just my human looking at something, and you're looking at it's like you're looking at a kindergarten version of it, and then you're going to get your PhD later on it, you know, and you're going to go back and really pull it apart and dissect it and see everything that went into it, every strand of energy that created it, and everything that happened there. And that's the only way we can resolve it. You know, so when I see people say, oh, I just left, or I just moved on, I would get frustrated with people who would just like walk away from a reality, or just say I'm done with it and leave. And because I would never see them again, in my human consciousness, I would say, boy, they really got over that shit fast. They just left. They were just gone, you know? And how come I can't do that? Well, why can't I just say that? It always reminds me of that scene in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, when Faith, who was one of the Slayers who was in, I don't know, season 3 or something, and maybe a later season, but that doesn't matter. But there was some conversation, and they were having a conversation, and the main Slayer, Buffy, was there listening to it and going along with it. And then Faith came in and listened to her, like, I don't know, 50 seconds of it, and she was like, oh, screw this, and she just walked right out, right? And then Buffy's sitting there going, why couldn't I do that? And it's the same kind of thing, you know? We kind of will get in that, like, why couldn't I do that? Why couldn't I just walk away? Why am I, oh, sorry, I was uploading something. Why am I still sitting in this when this person just walked away? Because we have that illusion, because they're not in front of us, that they have completely resolved it, moved on. You know, we have the stories we create. We didn't matter. It didn't matter to us. They didn't care about us. You know, we were replaceable. It didn't matter if we were there. We were lied to. We were manipulated. We were taken advantage of. We have the whole human story about what has happened. And the higher our consciousness goes, and the more we bring our body's consciousness up to really read our field and understand and be able to really feel into what's going on, we start to see different iterations of that. And we start to see that's not what was going on at all. You know, that person maybe didn't deal with anything. Definitely didn't deal with anything. They just go and do their journey their way. They do their resolution their way. They do their journey, and they're working through it their way, in their realities, their higher versions of themselves. Their higher consciousness is leading them, right? It's not personal. You know, this is just a reality we went through to get to this stuff that's coming up now. You know, to get to this, why is this happening? Why does this continue to happen? These are the kind of questions we start to ask ourselves. You know, because if these things happen so many times, we start to wonder. You're either going to be the person that sits there, you're either the Buffy or the Faith, okay? You're going to be the person that sits in that room and listens to what's going on and tries to figure out what's happening, or the one that just walked out. To me, there's not a lot of in between. You're one or the other. And can it be as easy as to say, yes, I'm over it and move on? Yes, it can be. But those are the realities we don't give a shit about. You know, that's the whole closure debate that comes up. You know, you don't give a shit about closure if you all of a sudden decide, oh, I'm not gonna go back to this grocery store anymore because of this person wasn't very nice to me. I don't want to be there anymore. Because you don't care about the grocery store. You don't need this big scene in the grocery store. You don't need to talk to the manager of the grocery store. You don't care. You walk away. It doesn't matter. You're not sitting there trying to get closure on stuff you don't care about. Okay? The whole closure thing, it should matter, right? It was still something that happened. Why do I not care about breaking this whole thing down and getting closure on it the way I care about this over here? Because you don't have the entanglement to it. You don't have the cords to it. You don't have the strings to it. You don't have any of that to it. You don't have a story around it. It doesn't matter. You know, you just walk away from it and it does not matter. That's why closure is such a human thing. Because we only want the closure on the things that matter more to us. We don't care about closure on the things that meant more to someone else. You know, that's our human mentality on it's all about me. I don't care about what's going on with anybody else. And anyone who says in their human consciousness that's not true, we're not being honest with ourselves. It doesn't mean we're bad humans, to use the good and bad polarization for a moment. It doesn't mean we're not nice people. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that it's our default program about us. You know, I left this relationship because it was over for me. Energetically, it was over. It occupied no more of my consciousness. I walked away. It did not matter. It doesn't matter if someone else needs something out of it or they need the elusive closure, which basically, like, I think I said this before. I know I've said it lots of times, actually. Just because it didn't end the way we wanted to. We wanted to keep going. That's what closure means to us. Extending it, you know, keeping it dragging on. We don't want to let it go. But if we really cared about that so much, we'd care about it everywhere. We selectively care about it, you know, as our human consciousness, as we live in these human realities, we selectively care about what we want to really button up. We don't care about anyone else, what they require out of a reality. We care what we do. That starts to change. And because we start to look at how everyone fits in, you know, we start to not just think about ourselves and what we wanted from it. We start to look at what did everyone come in to get, what does everyone want out of it? What is everyone trying to get out of this? You know, what's the purpose of us creating this? Why did I create that? Why is it still on my mind? And that's the big one. You know, and you can be years into an ascension process. You can be years into, if you're still in your awakening, if you're just starting your awakening, or you've gone through full body ascension and now you're just going into, whether you're going into 12th dimensional consciousness, you're going into oversoul, wherever you are, it doesn't matter. If it still occupies any of your consciousness at all, we're not technically over it. There's still something there. And that's kind of, if I think about it at all, it's still something there, you know. And then we have to look at why. If it's a thought that crosses my mind, and not just to tell a story. When you start going through, you know, teaching, and you start going through, you know, let me tell this story. A lot of times things will come back in your consciousness because you're using it to tell a story. You're using it to impart, you know, you're anchoring the reality for someone in a sense. It's kind of how I like to look at it. If I'm going to tell a story, I'm going to anchor it. I'm going to give it a little bit of flair. I'm going to anchor it in so someone can say, yeah, I understand it. When you talk about it in that sense, I can picture that. I understand how everyone played out in the reality. But when conceptually, I don't mind, I understand it. But when you break it down, I understand it. That's a little different because it's coming in for me just to say, but then it's gone again, you know? Now, when I'm just sitting in my room or I'm sitting anywhere and I'm outside and I'm thinking or talking out loud, which I do all the time, talking to myself, talking to me, different aspects of me, just talking to myself. And I'm still thinking about that, and it's wondering, you know, why do I feel like I'm not done with that yet? Why does it feel like I never got the closure I needed? Why does it still occupy my time at all? It means I might not have a cord to it. It might not occupy as much of your time as it used to. It might be a teeny little dental floss string. It might be a little teeny thread you can't barely see, but it's still there because you think about it at all. technically it's still there. Technically we haven't severed it. Technically we're still running something. We still want something from it. We still want some different ending to it. We want a finalization to it, because we still have this, we still are under this sometimes illusion that there's something physical that can happen that will make us say, okay, now, before, no, but now it's completely out of my field. Because that's basically what happens. It's out of your field, in a sense. It's out of your body. Let me rephrase that. It might still be in your field to come in if you're going to tell a story or to teach something, but it's a purpose to it coming in, and as soon as you tell the story, it leaves again. There's no emotion around it. You're not dwelling on it later. You're not thinking about it later because, oh, I brought it up. Now I'm going to think about it the rest of the day. It's not like that. It's totally different from that, and those are kind of how you can kind of start to peel them apart a little bit to say, okay, what if I'm still in my field? I'm almost embarrassed. We have this kind of embarrassment to ourselves, and it's our own judgment that, boy, it's been 10 years or 15 years or 5 decades, and boy, that I still think about that, and I should be over it, and I'm over it, but every once in a while, even if it's every once in a while, if it's a blip, it's still there. And if we're not utilizing it to teach and then it's going, we're not utilizing it, as an example for something, and we're dwelling on it still, even if it's for 20 seconds a day, or a song comes on the radio and all of a sudden it pops back in, it's still in our body. It has not cleared. It is not clearing yet, and there's a reason. And we need to know what that reason is. We need to clear it. We need to let it go. But not let it go. We need to resolve it. We need to completely resolve it. Not the human, oh, I'm going to resolve that and move on. Not even thinking about it anymore. Let me distract myself with 8 other people who look exactly like the person I'm trying to forget. And let's not worry about that. So we have to be able to really break down what is still there, and not convince ourselves that we should be over it. It shouldn't matter anymore. Why are we still holding on to this when no one else is? Why does it bother me? All the judgments you have around why. That's a whole separate ball we have to untangle, in a sense. We judge ourselves and beat ourselves up about not being over something, when there's so many energetics programs it links to. It's not just that one person, that one situation. That's how our human wants to look at it and trivialize it. And that's not what it is. It's beyond that. It's so much deeper inside than that. It's so much deeper in our consciousness, in our body. It could, because we're still tied to a collective that has not released a disempowerment state. And until that collective releases, we can't release that moment. There's so many. Okay, I've started. Oh, sorry. Oh.
We have these.
Whoa. Sorry. That's what happens when I try to do 2 things at once. We have this illusion to ourselves that, once you reach a certain level of ascension, nothing bothers us, nothing is still there, all of our human stuff is gone, but it does leave in parts and pieces. And as we unravel and peel off these parts and pieces and embody more of our soul, we dislodge a lot of that stuff. Sometimes these memories just come up and then they just go. But unless it's something that you really have to, someone else brings it up and you really have to dig deep and go, wow, did I know that person, or did I ever work at that company, or like I said, it doesn't matter what it is. It's just being honest with ourselves, but it's being honest with ourselves where we are with something. It doesn't matter the time. We get all hung up on the time, whether it was 10 minutes ago or 15 years ago, it doesn't matter. It's the program it represents. And once you get to the part where you can be honest and say, yeah, it's still something there. It could be a teeny tiny piece of what it used to be. And normally that's how it'll work. We'll kind of, as we release different programs, it seems like they go through different realities that seem to have nothing to do with that one. We still pick away at that one because it's hooked into the same program. But we can't see that. We can't see the connection to it, right? It feels like it's different. It's somewhere else. It's a whole different situation. But as we've cleared this over the years, this is kind of gone, and little by little and little by little, it's all of a sudden it's not as important as it felt. It's not as gut-wrenching. It's not as visceral, as it once was. So we have to give ourselves credit for that, but still see if there's a part that's still there. Let's work on that. And I see a lot of people say, oh, I can see it. Oh, yeah, I can see it's still there, but then we don't want to go deeper than that because there's a part where we don't want to let it go. Because when we completely resolve it and it goes, then it's gone. And for some of us, it could be this connection to something. You know, it's maybe our last connection to something. If it's a human experience, whatever. There's a reason we kind of don't like the feeling of that. You know, we don't like the feeling of losing it. Because it gave us something. It gave us an identity. It gave us a story. It gave us a connection. And even if it wasn't a connection that turned out the way we wanted it to, it was still a connection. Especially if we haven't felt that we've had that connection anywhere else. And we haven't achieved it within ourselves yet. So we're still looking at that as this ultimate thing. We have to really look at where that is. And really start to pull it apart and go, okay, why, even if it's a teeny tiny bit still there, it doesn't matter. That is not important. How much of it's still there is not important. Knowing it's still there is a step, but we have to go even deeper than that. And to really, really decide, am I really ready for this to go? What do I have to do? And sometimes if it's something I've been working on for a long time and it's still a little bit there, I'll say, okay, universe, which is just me, higher aspects of me, different aspects of me, just talking to me. Bring me a miracle on this one and show me what I have to do to move it out completely, you know. But we have to be ready to move it out completely. A lot of us will say that, but our human will still watch what your body does when you say that. I want to move it out completely because it does tie me to something. It's tying me to these old timelines. It's tying me to something else. What do we want to get out of it? Why do we not want to let it go? What does it represent to us? What do we feel like we're losing? What is the illusion of what we're losing if we completely clear it? You know, because we have this saying that we'll never, nothing else will ever happen. Or these stories we tell ourselves will never feel that way again, because when we start to connect with ourselves in that way, we don't require any external stuff to feel that way. But it is a process to get there. You know, it's just like when we look at a reality, and I used to do this too. You look at a reality and I'll say, well, I know I don't want to be in this one anymore, but the next one's not here yet. And that's not really true. There were realities that were there, but they were not the ones I really wanted, right? So I'd say, oh, it's not here yet. Well, let me rephrase that. Reality I wanted wasn't here yet. You know, the reality I thought I wanted wasn't here yet. It might not have been the highest aligned reality, but that's the one my human wanted. So I'm going to wait for that one. Well, that one's not here, so I'm going to stay here. And we kind of play that same game when we're talking about resolving things and really letting these cords go to different people, to different situations. Is we'll say, well, you know, when the new one comes in, I'll completely leave this one. But it's not about that. You know, it's not about, there's a lot of things that are trying to come in, but nothing can come in when we still have that. When we still have our hook, something still is hooked in. And we allow it to continue to be hooked in, you know. Because we haven't gotten something else to take its place. To fill that void that we feel like we're going to lose. You know, even though, like I said, it's a totally different feeling than it might have used to be. If it still occupies any of our time, we're still there with it. And it's not gone yet. It's not gone from our body yet. We can ask for more information on it. You know, someone's like, okay, what's going on with this? Why is it still here? What do I need to do? You know, someone's will say, bring me a miracle. Bring me a miracle with this one because I don't know what else to do with it. You know, I need a Hail Mary. To see, can this really finally clear to where it impacts none of my daily consciousness, and I'm never thinking about it. It never comes in, and we're not dwelling. Even if we're dwelling for 5 minutes a day or 5 minutes a month, technically it's still in our body. So, all right, I guess we're gonna end it there. So hopefully that was helpful. And keep practicing the art of intuition.